Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here for the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook updated on Tuesday the 29th of October. So we've had some chilly and bright days in recent times, just becoming less cold but a bit murkier over the days ahead. A relatively quiet weather pattern. Bits of fronts will be drifting up from the south to close out the week, and broadly then low pressure is likely to take hold as we go onwards through the weekend and beyond. At this stage, Sunday looks the poorer day as quite a deep low approaches from the southwest. As ever, getting the precise detail is uncertain once we're a few days ahead, especially in complicated weather patterns. We'll start off with a quick look at temperatures. This is the 850 millibar level that we often show, and by the time we get through to the weekend, it's back down to around 1300 metres. So that's as shown on this chart. Temperatures at that level then around 3 or 4 degrees, so we've lifted a little bit above freezing across the highest tops by this time. You can sort of see where the centre of low pressure is then around as the weekend draws on, and temperatures don't change a great deal. They probably come down a touch, so you might find that the highest Scottish tops dip close to freezing point as we go through the second half of the weekend and even onwards into next week, although maybe at this stage just not quite as cold as we've seen recently. Let's take you through the sequence of charts for the next few days then. And for Wednesday, high pressure that's been dominant to the north stays to the northeast, more or less, of the British Isles through the day. Fronts toward the southwest are starting to show their hand, but at this stage only just about getting into the south of Wales, and most of the mountain areas then will be dry throughout the course of the day. It'll be a chilly wind, strongest across the Welsh mountains, where gusty to lower slopes and through passes in places, which may be not far off gale force locally. Lighter winds across the Scottish Highlands, and the frost again first thing in the morning. Now things are gradually pushing northwards into Thursday. The front that is across Wales and southern England will, with time, slowly push towards northern England, so rather murky conditions, low clouds, some rain and drizzle on and off, maybe more persistent across Wales. Still some uncertainty just how far this will get through the day. Indications start to see it edging into southwest Scotland too as time goes on, but towards the north of Scotland, and in fact for much of the Highlands, it should be a dry day, still quite bright on the cool side, a frost again in the morning in the glens and the corries, and really a bright day with just some hazy sunshine through high cloud. Overall, though, by the time we get to Friday, most likely the milder, murkier air has spread most of the way across the country, and a rather haphazard series of fronts are trying to drift their way eastward. Some heavier rain crossing England and Wales, with rain and drizzle maybe on and off, and then a few showers to follow. Cloud bases up and down across the hills, maybe hanging on to most of the tops throughout the course of the day. For Scotland, I wonder whether we get into that murky pattern where the low cloud just fills in. There may be not that much rain around, but it's just a rather damp atmosphere. The far north may be escaping the best of all, with the drier and comparatively brighter conditions, with the airflow coming up from the south. Temperatures then lifting generally above freezing on most mountains. It's still messy into the weekend. There's no absolute clear-cut picture exactly who fares the best or the worst, apart from to say that that front will be still drifting its way slowly northeastwards, and a legacy of a relatively milder but also quite murky atmosphere may well be stuck with us. Some rain, some patchy rain and drizzle, some showers around across maybe some western coastal hills in Scotland. Keep an eye on your details then for this one. At this stage, it doesn't look as though Saturday comes out as a particularly wet day, but in some places it could end up rather disappointing and damp. The main focus of a heavier rain belt is more across the Atlantic at this stage. That system is more likely to develop into Sunday. And that's where we get to, and that's not really a pretty picture. It is maybe meteorologically, but if you're wanting to get out into the hills, it isn't, because it's a belt of heavy rain sweeping northwards. It's another wraparound across the southwest of the British Isles with the risk of gales, and that might be more confined to areas around the English Channel, but the risk of that getting into Wales. The wind across Scotland, a bit of a all over the place effort really. There could be some gales ahead of the front and a lull coming in. Don't treat this chart as the absolute detail, but I think the message of being low pressure in charge and the risk of some heavy rain, any sleet or snow, just confines the highest Scottish tops at this stage. Looks a pretty unsettled day overall. And although confidence of absolute day-to-day detail onwards into the start of next week is quite low, we're pretty high on confidence that the trend is unsettled, with a general zone of low pressure just revolving around like a washing machine over the top of the British Isles, and that could be the theme for several days ahead. The winds then quite varied. Locally, some marked lulls, but also the risk of turning suddenly blustery and gale force, just depending on where fronts and smaller little centres of low pressure revolve around the whole thing. Across Scotland, more often out of the east or the northeast, perhaps more across Wales, more out of the southwest. That will vary even from day to day. Maybe just a trend of, with time, the whole thing coming round to more of a northeasterly in general as we head toward the later part of the week, as low pressure begins to pull more towards Biscay and perhaps Central Europe, and that will just drag the temperatures and freezing levels back down a touch. And maybe the showers that come in from the northeast, again, of a wintry variety, a bit more frequently across the mountains. I would suggest at this stage not quite as chilly as we've just seen, but still favouring those cooler patterns. And the main message, a lack of westerly winds at this point, even through the first 10 days or so of November. So the western highlands of Scotland favouring comparatively dry, all relative to average through this period, and that may be an ongoing theme, while ever the centres of low pressure stay that bit further south. I think we need to watch, though, over several days next week across Wales, perhaps the Pennines, and even the eastern highlands of Scotland, depending on where the circulation gets to, for the risk of flooding if the rainfall amounts start to total up again, as is suggested off a few of the models, that with saturated ground it's not going to take much to bring that flood risk back into the picture. Stay up to date then, as ever, with your local forecast for your mountain area on our website, and I'll update the planning video again for you before the weekend. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.